Hello, I'm Michael Riley. I wanted to. I just got a message from on YouTube about my video with AIR-ACETYLENE. What I've been trying to do is, it appears, and I don't know where this came from. All of a sudden, it's not all of a sudden. It's been over the last probably 10 years, where a whole new generation of people brazing. Doing appliance repair, specifically appliance repair. Let me say up front, for guys that are getting into this, into repair, and some of the guys that are already in it, and some of these HVAC schools are given information that is being misunderstood, but they're also, I think, some of the ones that are teaching this stuff are part of this generation overlap that is that are giving those that they're teaching and instructions to the wrong information, and I don't think that they really realize they're doing this. Okay, let me explain something here, and for those that know this, that's fine. But it seems that there's a real serious issue. This is so bad that it's going into the tools that you use. Let me give you an example. You know, if you use a hammer, a little tiny hammer to fix the pin on your watch, to nail in the pin on your watch, knock it in between the links. Usually you're not going to use a hammer, but I'm just using this as an example. A little tiny hammer, you know, the little thing, where you just kind of tick, 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 okay? So let's say you, instead of you taking that little hammer, and you use a sledgehammer, what's going to happen to the watch? You're going to destroy it. It's too much hammer for the job. Okay? So I mean, there's a million different examples I could give of this kind of thing, where you're just using the wrong tool for the job. You could go the other way too and say you use a little tiny screwdriver and a glasses screwdriver for a big screw that's rusted in. Is that going to give you any, are you going to work? Is it going to work? No. You're going to break the screwdriver. Okay? If it was the right size, because the head's going to be different because it's different size screws. But that aside, the point of this is that you're using the wrong tool. And somehow, this has happened with guys going on YouTube and misunderstanding, just like Sub-Zero's still saying it, but Sub-Zero's doing it because they're telling techs to go in and say, you can't fix a 40-year-old refrigerator, freezer. Yes, you can. And you can convert it from R12 to 134A, and no, there is no sludging that happens. An engineering firm just left 6% of R12 oil, changed the compressor to R134A, put R134A with 6% of the old R12 oil in there still, and it didn't sludge, said Sub-Zero. Okay? I've been replacing these compressors for 30 years. It does not sludge. So this is all a lie that's been told, and Sub-Zero keeps pushing it because they're trying to force new sales. So they're either doing it on purpose, lying to the customer to force new sales, or they're that dumb and they don't know. It's one or the other. The guys out here that didn't believe that garbage, because they've been converting cars 112 to 134A for 30 years. Of course you can do it. You put a new R134A compressor in that comes with the R134A oil in a refrigerator, domestic home refrigerator. Get rid of the old R12 with the oil in it, you're going to blow out the system, and it's not even a big deal. We used to use our R11, but you can't get it anymore because of the ban from R12. Same thing. Fluorocarbons. So it's not available. It was the best cleaner on the market. It didn't leave any debris. It's like pouring alcohol, cleaning something with alcohol, isopropyl alcohol. No residue was left, but you can't get any more. They have cleaners now. I'm not using that garbage. I don't ever put anything in a system that's not supposed to be in there when it's operational. If it's a cleaner, that's the last thing you're putting in, besides the Freon. I'm not going to put something in there that might leave a residue. That's stupid. Just same thing with oil, with leak detectors. Guys, you want to put that in the air conditioner? Go ahead. The HVAC? Go ahead. But don't put it in a domestic refrigerator. Okay? And I'm going to make this too long. I always do. Because I come up with things. If you have a leak and it's lasting forever, the leak, to lose all the Freon, it's real simple, guys. If it's taken forever to lose all the Freon, it's a low side leak. Okay? Hit yourself in the back of the head. Duh. If it's a high side leak at 125, 135 pounds, the Freon's going to be out in minutes or seconds. There ain't going to be any Freon in there. In about 10 minutes, it's going to be empty. Okay? So don't make it so difficult. If it's a low side leak, the only thing that's going to corrode and leak is the evaporator and the heat exchanger. Don't guess on which one it is, and throw away your leak detectors. Everybody can tell you, and everybody will agree, that it just goes off all. You're always waving the thing, blowing on it, the tip to try to get it to stop going crazy, and alerting. Throw it away. Okay, even the electronic ones, they're not going to tell you exactly where the pinhole leak is. You already know there's a leak. Common sense. Hit yourself in the back of the head again. If it's a low side leak and it's dropping in level of Freon level over weeks or months, it's a low side leak. High side leak it'll be in a vacuum. There won't be any Freon left in there. And the high sides don't normally leak unless it's the heater loop sitting down in the drain condensation pan. Those can leak. They're copper and they corrode sometimes. But other than that, condenser's never going to leak. They're steel. Unless you shoot a bullet in it. Okay? Because they're not in a moist environment. They're not going to corrode. So, it's that simple, guys. Same thing with HVAC. You guys know that if it's a low side leak and it's got Freon in it, you automatically say, it's evaporator. In that case, you usually say it's evaporator. Because there's no such thing as a heat exchanger on an HVAC. Heat exchanger is the two tubings being soldered together, the capillary and the suction line. It causes a heat exchange. Suction line, you don't want it to go back to the compressor with liquid in it. It can ruin a compressor with liquid. It doesn't usually. More on HVAC and bigger systems, it can do that because there's so much more going back. But usually on a domestic, it's not going to ruin it anyways. But anyways, that's the purpose. The capillary tube is soldered to it because the capillary tube is warm. You won't feel it hot, but basically it's hot compared to this. In physics sense, change of state. So this is hot, this is cold, freezing cold, liquid, and it warms it up. It warms up the suction line. And it neutralizes this one to like room temperature from what warmth it did have. When it was pushed out of the compressor, the discharge line, through the condenser, it cooled it somewhat because it was hot when it came out of the compressor. It went into the dryer and then the capillary tube. It goes in the dryer and out the dryer to the capillary tube and then into the evaporator. On the way there, it's soldered from the compressor to the evaporator. It's soldered to the capillary, soldered to the suction line. And then there's insul tube over it. Keep it from sweating. It generally is not going to sweat because it neutralizes the temperature. They neutralize each other, okay? So that's the heat exchanger on a domestic refrigerator because there's no expansion valve. We don't have a metering device. The capillary tube is the metering device, okay? There's your dryer. This is another story here. This is Sub-Zero not knowing what they're doing. They call this an accumulator. They're idiots. This is not an accumulator. It's a hollow tube, 7/8 hollow tube, the suction line, so that they were afraid liquid was going to go back. So they made the tube bigger so it would turn into gas and go back to the compressor. That's not accumulator. Accumulator, anybody knows what accumulator is? It's a larger chamber that has two chambers inside of it that pools the Freon and oil at the bottom, and then there's a small, tiny metering hole in that small chamber, lower chamber, and then it bubbles out the Freon and the oil, so especially the oil, so that the oil will mix into the Freon on the way back. That's an accumulator. This is engineers not knowing what they're doing. Seriously, this is Sub-Zero. This is how dumb Sub-Zero engineers were when they designed this. I mean dumb. It's amazing it even worked. Of course, that's not going to cause it not to work, but they're telling them disregard it now. Yeah, because the engineers now told them, you guys were idiots. Anyway, so there's a capillary tube. It's soldered to the suction line. Now the suction line's larger than this, just a little bit. This is 1/4 inch, but it's 5/16. Suction lines are usually 5/16. The heat exchanger, and it's soldered to it. So there's a heat exchange. That's why it's called a heat exchanger. There is no expansion valve or any other kind of metering device. I'm just going to keep it simple. Any other metering device in refrigerators for homes. Now refrigerators, commercial, here's where the beginning of the video was started. There's a huge difference, guys. Huge difference. And this is where these schools are screwing guys up because they're not telling them the difference. And it's obvious they're not telling them the difference because they're telling them to use Oxy-Acetylene. You cannot do this, guys, for a million different reasons. Domestic home refrigerators for your home, your kitchen, at your house. I'm going to be real specific because this is just unbelievable that this has gotten a whole new generation of people out there have no clue. And it's like, where did this get lost? One of the reasons, and you can take offense to this, I don't care. I hope you have thick enough skin not to and just learn the right way to do things. But this has been lost because we got South Park, TV show, we got all these shows teaching disrespect, don't listen to your elders, I mean, this attitude is unbelievable. There's commercials on TV about Progressive Insurance has a commercial. Don't become your parents. Like we don't know anything. Excuse me? We've been doing this for hundreds of years before you were born. And now all this generation from millennials to Gen Z is they can do better. They know a better way of doing it. Guess what, guys? You're screwing everything up. And we boomers have to come back in there and some of the millennials, and we got to fix this behind you. It's unbelievable. And we're just shaking our head, going like I'm doing. Where did they lose this? Because you're not learning from, you're going on YouTube and learning this. And I'm not saying it's everybody, but the texts that I do get that come to me are great because they're like, man, I just want to learn the right way to do it, like it's always been. But now we got so many of these younger guys going, we know better, these low temp solders, and that's garbage, guys. It's garbage. It's the factories and the manufacturers are not going to ever endorse that garbage that you're using. Using low temp solders is not safe. It's not safe. I mean, it's unbelievable. You guys know better. The reason, it's not that you know better. You're using that as an excuse. You're too lazy to do things the right way. But the amazing thing to me is these HVAC schools, I did HVAC for 20 years. And I've never used Oxy-Acetylene. You can use a turbo torch. In fact, Uniweld, I was just watching a Uniweld video, and the guy was talking about using oxy-acetylene, and he uses also, he's a tech, he uses the turbo torch, but he uses like a 14 up to 32 tip. I mean, 32 tip on a turbo torch, you can use for 4 to 6 inch copper. The bigger the tip, the bigger the copper. The smaller the tip, and there's multiple different size tips for the turbo torch. This is a turbo torch handle. That's an A8. And that's the proper tip to use for a refrigerator in a home. Here's the air injection holes. It's called AIR-ACETYLENE. Air. Oxygen. Air. Not oxygen. It's air. It sucks it in and mixes and causes a swirling at the tip, which creates that swirling around the copper, so then it actually flows the solder at the proper temperature, not 3,000 to 6,000 degrees, which is oxy-acetylene. We're coming into some other problems here, and this is a lot of different issues you're creating for yourselves. I just answered this guy on YouTube. He's using, I mean, I just can't understand this stuff. Oxypropane. What are you frickin' kidding me? What is wrong with you people? And yes, I'm aggravated. I have a training school. I've been training for 30 years. And I'm a full-line tech. And I've been doing this for over 40 years, going on 50. What is wrong with you people? You're using stuff we've never ever used hundreds of years. The proper temperature is 1,400 to 1,700 degrees for 1/4 inch to capillary. You use oxy-acetylene on this capillary tube, you're going to melt it. Oh, I've used oxy-acetylene. Yeah, I know it's possible. But why? The other problem you're creating is it's way too freaking hot. 3,000 to 6,000 degrees. It's a cutting torch temperature. Plus, you got two tanks, oxygen you're lugging in the carrier, dragging it across their floor, possibly scratching their floor because it's so heavy. Guess what happens with mine? My tank's not this small, but it's an MC tank. My tank is this big. The MC, it's a small MC tank. This big. Not the bottle size, the 2 hands. It's that big. It's about 12 inches, 15 inches tall. It's a small tank. I put it underneath my arm. And then I have my toolbox in my hand and the other toolbox in the other hand. I got my torch wrapped around the end of it, the hose, and the regulator's on there already on the tank, the cylinder, and I've got my turbo torch tip hanging on it, and I put it underneath my arm. It's that easy to carry in. I'm not dragging in this whole lug setup. The other thing is, when I turn on the torch, guess what you get all over the ceiling with oxy-acetylene? I don't have to tell you, because the customer tells you, and they want you to get off their damn ceiling. What the hell's wrong with you? Use oxy-acetylene in a frickin' shop, not in a customer's kitchen. I mean, what is wrong with you people? Do you not know? And for those that just truly don't know, the other ones, there's so many of them that refuse to use the proper thing. That's the ones that I'm really being hard on here. If you don't know, I apologize for my dramatics here. But follow with me and you'll learn the right way to do things. But I'm just really aggravated at it's because they're not going to listen to somebody else. You don't know. That's the old way of, we do things different now. No, we don't. The manufacturers are never going to endorse what you're doing. Never. Why? Because it's unsafe and it's not going to hold. But also the temperature of the solders that you're using, 450, 750, it's not sufficient. If those lines get that hot, you're going to end up with a leak, and you could actually end up with an explosion. Especially with some of this butane that they're using. Are you freaking kidding? That's even more of a reason not to be using a low temp solder. We're supposed to be brazing, not soldering. Soldering is not a long-term permanent type of a weld. Weld is a different thing, so I'm using that in a general sense. Brazing is what we're doing, and it's at 14 to 1700 degrees. You're going to use like sulfos, 15% silver solder. They tell you not to use flux. I'm going to tell you always use flux. Okay? And don't go getting solder with flux in it. I'm still, if I'm training you, use your emery cloth. Do not use a wire brush. You leave marks between the wires where it's dirty still. Common sense again. Use the emery cloth so you get the whole thing clean. That's the key to brazing. If you don't get it clean, one spot, that's why you're on it so long. You're trying to get that spot. It's not gonna adhere. It's not gonna meld. Solder's not gonna melt into the metal because it's dirty. Okay, you gotta get it clean, and then you put the flux on. The flux just gets it to run around, and it has to be clean, just like when you're using glues and stuff. They always tell you in the instructions, make sure it's clean of oil and all that. Same thing. The solder's not gonna bond with the metal. Okay? So the temperature of the torch is critically important. When you're using oxy-acetylene, you got to adjust it to the oxygen and the acetylene. That's where you're getting your soot until you get it adjusted. Guess what? 1, not 2, because you only have acetylene. You turn this on, boom, no adjustments. The regulator, there's no adjustments on the regulator. You turn it on, it's lit. You 20 to 30 seconds, and it gets hot enough, because I did a 20-second to 30-second video to prove it to people. It's on my YouTube channel. And brazed a joint in 20 seconds. Yes, they get hot enough. It depends on the tip you're using. A8 is the proper tip. This pulls down, this pulls out. As he was saying on the video, which is really important, there is a rubber O-ring there. I sometimes lick it. It's not a good thing to do because you got acetylene, which is caustic. And I always rub my tongue after I do that kind of stupid stuff. Anyways, when I get it kind of wet, up your finger and then go around it, and because it'll dry, and then you don't want to rip it when you're putting it in. But I always turn it and push hard and make sure, pull on it. If you like this and this pops out, you're going to freak out, okay? I've had, not this happen to me, this has never happened to me in 40 plus years, but I've had oil spit from the compressor and light me on fire. Customer was freaking out. I didn't freak out because I know that all I have to do is push down and it's going to be gone. It's spots of oil. Common sense. Don't freak out. That's the important thing when you're using this kind of stuff. Don't freak out. Okay? And don't drop it or throw it. Don't. Turn the tip away from you. If this is gone, turn this away from you. If it's not shooting at you and not shooting at something else, nothing's gonna happen. Turn it off. Don't freak out. That's where real serious problems happen, is when somebody freaks out. You throw this, now it gets into the drapes that are over here, and you just burned the frickin' house down. and possibly killed somebody. Keep control of what you're doing yourself when you're working with this kind of stuff, or don't do it. Okay? Same thing when you pull away and you cut yourself real bad. Don't freak out. It happens to every tech. It's happened to me a million times. I had one right there. You can see the line. Cut my artery in half. I didn't freak out. I grabbed my arm, had a lady call the ambulance, paramedics. Then I went to the hospital. They sewed the artery up. I mean, it's squirting everywhere. The artery was cut in half. It was squirting everywhere. I could have died in seconds if I hadn't grabbed a hold of it. Keep your mind about you. Stuff's going to happen. Don't freak out. If it scares you enough to get away, don't do this, then don't do it. It shouldn't scare you. You got to be smart when you're working on stuff. We're working with dangerous stuff. Okay? And acetylene is very dangerous. It's not a stable gas. It's the least stable gas of, I think, all gases. Because if the gas separates from the acetylene, it can blow up. And that's why they tell you not to turn the tank over. Guess what? My acetylene tank was always sitting in my truck on its side, rolling around in the back of the truck. Never blew up. Okay? Never. And I was in Arizona. It's probably 180 to 200 in the back of my truck in the summertime. It never blew up. And it's banging against the wall and laying on its side, and you're supposed to always keep it upright. Anyways, don't do that. Keep it upright. Always follow the rules. But it would fall over, and I'm driving, and I usually kept it upright. Anyways, back to the beginning of the video once again. I don't mind getting off track here, because these other things that I'm talking about are critically important as well. But the major thing is that domestic refrigerators, as I started to point out, capillary tube. It's the metering system that is the difference. And the size of the tubing. So HVAC schools, stop telling everybody to use Oxy-Acetylene. No. If you're working on appliances, HVAC is not what we consider in this business an appliance. It is, in a sense, an air conditioning appliance, but it's not an appliance, okay? Washer, dryer, refrigerator, those are home appliances. Air conditioner is an air conditioning system. HVAC, it's not an appliance. If it's a refrigerator, freezer, an appliance, home refrigerator and freezer in a home, in their kitchen, you're not going to use Oxy-Acetylene. Okay? You got to use these, and number 8 is the best tip to use that I've used for the whole time I've ever been doing this. It's the best tip to use. I've also got a double tip. It comes up and it claws back, and it's 2 flames. And it's a little bit smaller tip. But because it's hitting it from both sides, it can be a smaller tip. But it also, I can use this handle with it. And it's great because it can get in small spaces as well. But that's the other thing about, this is 1400. The flame temperature off the flame is higher than 14 to 1700. But what you realize in it swirling and getting the tube hot is it gets to about 14 to 1700 degrees, which is the same temperature for flux and silver solder. It's the perfect temperature. So you're not 3,000 or 6,000 degrees. Between 3,000 and 6,000 degrees, 5,700 is usually about the temperature that the metal gets with Oxy-Acetylene. That's 4,000 degrees higher than what it needs to be. That's why you're causing carbon in the system. And soot on the roof, ceiling. Probably on the roof too, outside on the roof. But anyways, you don't need to ever be adjusting these. You turn it on, boom, you got a flame. You braze it and you're off it. And it's the exact temperature that you need. It's not way above. And so you're not going to get carbon buildup in the system on the inside of the copper. When you use a turbo torch tip, I would say the number 8. This turbo torch setup with the hose and the regulator is about $150 on eBay, new. And they'll run up to about $300 or so. You know, some guys just want to rip you off, but usually you can get them for about $150, $200, the whole kit. You want to get it with an MC tank regulator. MC tank, it's a different fitting to attach to the tank. On the MC tank, the regulator has an MC tank nut. If you get the B tank one, you got to get the taller, bigger, heavier B tank. I'm not carrying that thing in the house. This guy made a comment about how much he was using oxy-propane. I've never even used this term before. I know it's out there, but we don't use it. It's the wrong gas. And you don't need oxygen. He said, I've replaced 3 oxygen tanks, and it's been over a year, and I've never replaced the propane yet. Well, duh. It's the oxygen. But you don't even need to be wasting money on the oxygen. What are you using oxygen for? Wait till you get older and you need it for the hospital. You're not going to be able to afford it. You keep buying oxygen now. When you need oxygen when you're 80, you won't be able to afford it. Moron, stop using oxygen. What do you need oxygen for? My God, the tube it's hardly anything. Both of them. And that's what you have on refrigerators and freezers in a domestic home situation. You don't have 5/8, 7/8. Yeah, that stuff. You need to get a different tip. You can use a turbo torch AIR-ACETYLENE. This is called AIR-ACETYLENE. AIR-ACETYLENE. Because the air comes in through the ports here and mixes with the acetylene and then swirls out the tip around the tube. It actually swirls around. It swirls around this copper, all the way around it. And when it flows, the solder, it just goes all the way around. Boom, you're off of it. You don't have to sit there and turn it and go around. No. With the flux on it, it pulls it all the way around. You're off. It's that quick. One guy I was training said, wow, that's smooth. That's the word. And I like that word. Because that's exactly what it is. It's smooth. It's the right temperature. It sucks it around. You had it nice and clean with the emery cloth. You put flux on it. You got it the right temperature because it's a perfect temperature. You keep touching it until it flows. Doom, doom, doom. You don't sit and feed it. You just hit it like maybe on the top, side, and side, and you're off. Because it pulls it around. The other side. You don't have to do the other side. Okay? But it's like you just touch it. You don't feed it. Or you're going to have a big glob on the bottom. Perfect temperature. It does not, because you're not on it that long, 20, 30 seconds, how are you going to get carbon buildup in the system? Plus, it's not hot enough. Okay? You're off it that fast. And you're not flowing nitrogen like you have to do when you use oxy-acetylene. Do you want to, now you want to drag in a big nitrogen tank too? I have never in 40 plus years used nitrogen. Never. Don't need it. Don't need it. Don't need oxygen. I'm not carrying in all that crap you guys are carrying in for whatever stupid reason you're carrying it in. And it's ignorance. It's not being trained properly and not learning properly. and not going out there, but also it's the laziness and not wanting to listen to those that have been doing it before you, but also you're going to find a better way of doing it. And we have so many that way these days with YouTube. Guess what? Factories aren't going to endorse what you're doing. It's not safe, and it's not going to last the way you're doing it. We got to go back out there because they won't call you back. You don't even know that it didn't work because they don't call you back because they know you don't know what you're doing. People are on here on YouTube themselves, customers, and they're seeing this crap. And you know, it's like these Sub-Zeros that I make restoration kits for. I've had to travel to different states in the last several years, many different states, to go and clean up after a tech that screwed it all up. They're using these crimp fittings. And you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to get specific by name. I mean, they're even going so stupid. They're using shark bite. You can't do that in couplings. Wow, really? Yeah, we can use a coupling. Oh my God. On aluminum too. I mean, wow, what's going on? I just can't understand how this industry is just gone to crap, tech-wise. Well, you guys don't know what the hell you're doing. So many of you, not all of you, but I just got to blame it on YouTube and all these other factors. But the other thing is you don't want to pay for the tools. I mean, how about you stop with the DoorDash crap and not acting like you're some rich person having food delivered to your house all the time. You must be screwing the driver over because you're so cheap you don't even want to have Domino's to deliver your pizza and tip the driver. You got to have DoorDash send it out to you. Domino's food. Well, Domino's refusing it now. They don't want anything to do with that garbage. Or get up and drive over to Domino's and pick it up yourself. I mean, it's like we got a whole generation that are rich people. But then you don't want to have cable. You want to go on, you want to do everything through Wi-Fi. So you don't have to pay for cable because you're so cheap. While the video sits there and clocks, it starts running and then it stops again. How do you watch a TV show that way? Why don't you go back, and start paying for things like it's been around for 50, 60, 70 years. But no, Hulu, all these things, Netflix, you guys you want to do Wi-Fi way. Wi-Fi sucks. I still have a landline because I'm not, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Everybody deals with that. Are you kidding? It's the same thing with the video, with the internet, with Wi-Fi. I mean, wow, really? We're just going backwards. You guys took us backwards. It's just unbelievable. We were going forward and we had, high upload streams, high downloads. And then you say, I moved and they tried to put Wi-Fi in my house. Well, they brought it in here. I said, get that crap out of my house. I want direct wire, cable. I'm not paying for that garbage. I'm not a Gen Z or a millennial that doesn't know the right things, the way to do things. I mean, are you kidding? I want a phone that I can hear and there's no interruption and it's really clear. That's a landline. Not a cell phone. I mean, you hang up, you got to keep calling the person back again. This is what's happening with these appliance repairs. These customers are dealing with this crap from these techs that don't know what they're doing. And this is why I'm so aggravated, because I'm a trainer. What is wrong with you guys? Does anybody care about doing things the right way anymore? The important thing with this is that the customer deserves to be treated properly. You're charging them $1,000, $1,200, and you're doing crap work that's not going to last. You're just ripping them off. Is what you're doing. That's why they won't call you back when something happens with it. I've had him call me and say, I'm not going to call him back. The guy seemed like he didn't even know what he was doing. But since he was here, I didn't want to argue with him. I was afraid of the guy. That's been a couple cases. They get some foreigners in there that have an attitude or something, and they're actually afraid of the people. And that's really disturbing too. I had one lady call me, and she asked me to call the police. Because the guy wouldn't leave her house. He was demanding money, and she told him she didn't want him to fix it. And he said, I'm not leaving until I get paid. She called me and wanted me to call the police, and I did. I wouldn't tell her no. I mean, are you kidding? Wow. I mean, these people are just terrified of the tech, that they're going to not do it right, they're going to rip them off. Where did this come from? I mean, there was cases of this once in a great while. You hear about some idiot doing this, but now it's really bad. Like I said, I've had to fly to different cities. The customers have paid me to fly me out to there. My airfare, round trip, because you guys won't do the job right. Colorado twice, New Mexico 3 times, Ohio twice. I mean, many different cities. It's just unbelievable. So this is why we're getting upset. The ones out here that have been doing this forever, and we got to go out there and clean up this garbage that's being done and the treatment that you're treating the customers with. And like I said, I'm not talking about everybody, but there's too many of you guys out there just stealing from customers and treating them crap and doing stuff that is just not endorsed. You have a better way of doing it. No, you don't. Buy the proper equipment. In this case, the Turbo Torch kit is dramatically cheaper, easier. You're not dragging all this equipment, 2 tanks, 3 tanks with the nitrogen. You're adding hours to it, flowing nitrogen to the job. You're adding hours to it. What are you doing? Do the job properly. You $40 for the MC tank of acetylene. It lasts about a year. I mean, you don't use that much of it at a time because you're only 20, 30 seconds and you turn it off. You do another drink, 20, 30 seconds. You're not sitting there with it on the whole time like you do with Oxy-Acetylene and trying to adjust it and sit. You're not dealing with that. 3 tanks of oxygen this guy used for 1 propane tank, and it's been a year. He's paid for 3 tanks of oxygen. He doesn't even need it. He's using the wrong gas. He has the wrong setup. And same thing with Oxy-Acetylene. Way too hot. Way too hot. It's a cutting torch. Unless you have larger tubing. 7/8, 5/8, 7/8, and bigger. Then you got to use a bigger tip too. So learn the proper way to do it, and you'll be amazed that not only your tools are a lot cheaper because you don't have this big setup, this cart and everything that makes $600 to $1,000, you know, or more. You don't need that. A dual hose setup because it's Oxy-Acetylene. You don't need that. The tubing's too small for that. That's not what Oxy-Acetylene's for. HVAC guys and schools, stop telling them to use it on refrigerators if you are. Oxy-Acetylene. It's the wrong torch. We use a turbo torch with acetylene only. AIR-ACETYLENE. Turbo torch with an A8 tip. But I've heard so many guys and seen it on YouTube. Yeah, well, I went to air conditioning school, and that's what they told us to use. I'm sure if they did, I'm going to be really irritated. If they tell me you use it on a refrigerator, I'm sure they're not saying that. If they are, I'm really kind of livid. But it's an HVAC school, guys. The systems are different. You may think it's a sealed system. They're all the same. They're not. Refrigerator in the home, our systems, appliance, refrigerator, and freezers in the home are specifically called sealed systems. Okay? They are specifically called that. Sealed system. So when you hear that term, sealed system, you're not talking about an air conditioner. You're not talking about a refrigerator in a restaurant. You're not talking about those other systems. Those are commercial and HVAC systems. Commercial is another key word. If it's a commercial system, it's in a restaurant or something of that sort. Okay? It does not have a capillary tube system. In most cases, they're not going to have capillary tube system. They are expansion valve systems. Same thing with the HVAC. And in those cases, they're much larger tubing. So you're probably going to use Oxy-Acetylene or the bigger tips for a turbo torch. But in most cases, guys are going to use Oxy-Acetylene. Okay? For commercial refrigeration, and it's called refrigeration. That's another thing. Ours are called sealed system. We don't call our refrigerators refrigeration. Do not use that term. That is for commercial refrigeration. That term is specific to them. If it's called a refrigeration unit, you know, if you've been in the business and know what you're doing, they're talking about a system, an expansion valve system in a restaurant or something of that sort. Refrigeration unit. Okay? A cooler that they keep the condiments in. That's a refrigeration unit. Ours are sealed system units. Okay? That's the difference. So HVAC schools are going to call them HVAC systems. Specific. I'm sure and hopeful that they're not telling you to use Oxy-Acetylene on appliance sealed systems. They're probably not doing that, but you're assuming. So now you know some of the nomenclature, some of the verbiage, some of the glossary items, what these terms mean. They are specific to the type of unit it is. Okay? And I'm sure many of you just might have learned something. Most of the guys that have even been in business for some time don't even know the difference. Okay, so I wouldn't put that on you. If you're learning, that's fine. There's a difference. So are the tools that you use. So when I get somebody that says, a customer, that I'm selling an HV or a restoration unit for the sealed system on a Sub-Zero refrigerator, I say, I get them, they say, I don't have anybody. I say, you know what, don't call the service companies. Go talk to your neighbors. Somebody knows a guy that works on refrigerators because they've had them for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever. They've found somebody. Somebody knows somebody. That's the best way to find somebody, a tech. It's not calling up service companies. It's just not. Because you don't know who the heck you're getting. You're probably going to get one of the bad people out there. And there's a million of them now that don't know what they're doing. Like I started to rant and rave about in the first place. Justifiably rant and rave. I'm fed up with going to different states to clean up after these bozos. They're just ripping customers off. But I'll tell the customer, or if you know an HVAC guy, but have him contact me. He's going to say, I've never worked on a refrigerator before, and he's saying that because he's being honest. And that's a good tech that does that. He says, and an experienced tech that knows what he's doing. Because he says he knows there's a difference. And he doesn't know the differences, so he doesn't really want to mess with it. But say if he answers that way, that's good. Have him contact me, tell him, I'm not going to tell him what to do, but I'll share with him if he wants to make some money. He can do the job. If he's a good AC guy, he can do the job. Because he knows how to braze. He knows how to evacuate a system. He knows how to charge the system and all the key points. But there are some differences, and I'll share those with him. Give him some tips, and he'll be successful. But there's differences, okay? So that's why I even do that. Because, no, I know what I'm doing. Attitude doesn't work. There are differences. Pressure differences, all kinds of differences. But the key thing for you here, you do not need to flow nitrogen when you're working on a refrigerator in a home. If you're using the right torch, and the right torch is not oxy-acetylene, it is a turbo torch with an A8 tip or very close to it. That's the proper temperature. In an acetylene tank, like I said, the tank is about this big, about 15 inches, 12 inches, 15 inches tall. I can put it under my arm, carry the whole setup in. With the toolbox in that same hand and a toolbox in the other hand. I have everything in one walk-in. I'm not dragging anything across the floor. And I carry it all out in one walkout. Yeah, it doesn't take me 45 minutes to bring stuff in and take it back out. No. Okay? It's a lot quicker. Plus, you don't have all that extra time flowing the nitrogen and all the other garbage that you got to do. Okay? Cleaning the sealing off of the suit that you got up there. I mean, that's got to be a nightmare. I've never done it because I've never been stupid enough to take oxy-acetylene in the home. That's just insane that somebody would do that. It's ignorant. You don't know what you're doing. I'm just going to be brutally honest. If you don't like me, that's fine. I don't care. But hopefully you'll have thick enough skin, like I said at the beginning, to realize that, hey, I can learn something here. Let's take his insults for a second. But it's not meant for everybody. It's the idiots that don't want to do it, like I said before. Those are where the insults are for. And they're making a bad name for all of us. So maybe you guys ought to jump on the bandwagon here and think up some insults to call them too, and keep them out of the homes that we're helping customers to do repairs with. We got to keep these guys away from our customers. And that's why I'm so brutally honest about it. This is serious, especially with butane now. Are you kidding? I mean, this is so stupid. Putting barbecue gas in a damn refrigerator. I mean, unbelievable. I tell you, don't put your refrigerator next to the stove. It can blow up. Are you kidding? Wow. I mean, I'd rather the ozone have a problem, which it's not, with R134A. It's fine with R134A. But I'd rather the ozone get a hole in it than blow up my house. This is how stupid the engineers are, too. It's just unbelievable. The common sense of these millennials is zero. They have none. I mean, look at the cars. I'm not even going to go there. You know, it's more recalls than I've ever seen in my 60-plus years on this earth in cars since the millennials started doing the engineering. It's unbelievable. I mean, there's millions and millions of recalls on cars because they're not engineering them right. Let's forget about what those people before us did. They did everything wrong. That's the attitude. Let's do it a different way. And they're screwing everything up. You can't start over. You build on something that's proven. Not the millennials and Zs. Nope. Wait till the A's are already born. God forbid. Maybe they'll start turning around. Actually, I do see some turning around that's going on right now. So hopefully we'll get these two generations out of the way. In fact, they're killing themselves off with the selfies and, you know, in planes, jumping out of planes and taking a selfie. And I mean, they're killing themselves. It's unbelievable. With stupidity. Left and right, drugs and stupidity. You're constantly hearing about it. You've heard about it. You constantly hear about these idiots dying. They're 19 years old. They're doing something stupid because of a viral video. Well, they're getting rid of themselves. Wow. I mean, boomers might have to come back There might not be any millennials and Zs left. In time, with all the stupidity, they're getting rid of themselves. It's unbelievable. And it's because of their parents. Parents, I was in homes dealing with their parents. Talk about no common sense. They were just coddling those millennials and Zs. Oh, they can't do any wrong. You just let them experiment. They just let them write with marker and everything on the inside of the refrigerator. Yeah, that was a real example. I opened the freezer and refrigerator door, and there was marker and crayon, everything on the inside walls. Oh, I just let them be creative. Are you kidding? Where's the wooden paddle? He'll never do that again. And the cussing and the disrespect towards their parents. They're 5 years old using the F word. Wow. South Park taught them total disrespect. It's unbelievable. And then they act like they know everything. And they don't. And they're going bye-bye from stupidity left and right. Yeah. I just shake my head every time I hear a report of another one died from his own stupidity or her own stupidity. Just shake my head. So, I mean, we may have to come out of retirement because nobody left to take care of the customer. Properly, anyways. So I hope this is helpful. I actually enjoy beating up on them and letting them know what worthless garbage they are. I'm the funnest, nicest person in the world. But this kind of stuff just really irritates me. It's just stupid. Why we have to deal with this? Customers don't deserve this. They don't deserve to deal with this. You go in there, you're supposed to do the proper job. Do you know that that's how you don't have to advertise when you take care of a customer properly? If you fix it properly for the customer, you're also going to get out of there quicker if you have the right tools. I just told you, it's going to be hours and hours longer using the wrong tools like you're using them. Using the wrong tools. Plus it costs you more. Nitrogen, oxygen, 3 tanks of oxygen in a year when you don't even need oxygen. I mean, I have to laugh because this is really stupid. This is how stupid you are that are doing this. It's unbelievable. So I hope this is helpful to some. I would have been laughing the whole time. The problem is you wouldn't take me seriously about it. But that's the way I usually am. I joke about everything. But this is a serious thing, and I just really have to be serious about it. I got to get in my training mode. It's sad. So please, I hope some people, anybody can leave a comment. That's fine. And if you're rude or something, I'll just disregard you anyways, because it just shows me that you don't, you're not anybody to listen to anyways, because you don't know what you're doing or saying. And so I just delete those anyways, block you and let you go out there on your own. It doesn't affect me because stupidity doesn't affect me. So I'm not going to be affected by your rude comment or whatever. I'm just not, because you're not important in the world. You're just not until you start doing things the right way and show that you actually have some brain cells. You're not important. You're certainly not important to the customer. And that's really important, and that's what this is all about. They don't want you in their house. They don't want to be ripped off by you. Okay? That's the truth. And it's the hard truth, and it's the solid truth. It's just the way it is. And we don't want you, the ones out here doing the right job, we don't want you in their homes either. We want you out of our industry. It's that simple. You want to rip somebody off? Go back and talk to mommy and see if she has your little toy soldiers still in your bedroom, in your basement. Maybe you can rip off from your little toy soldiers. Yeah, you could play games with them, because you're not going to play games out here. I call people out. There's videos on my YouTube about techs and companies that I've had to follow up, and I've called them out. If I catch you, I'll do the same with you and I'll name you. I will do so. Because customers need to know who you are, as well the Attorney General needs to know who you are. Because you're making things unsafe in a customer's home. And I will not back off of doing that. Will not back off. Start doing things right. If you have questions for me, like I said, I'm just the nicest guy, and I'll spend whatever time you need to talk to you and help you out. The way I work is show me respect, I give you respect. I usually give it until somebody doesn't give it back, and then I stop. And I stop abruptly, and I cease, and I get rid of you. I just block you because you're not worthy of talking to somebody that knows what they're doing. Do I know it all? No, I don't. No, been divorced twice. It proves that. Told me all the time I didn't know what I was talking about. Of course, they tend to do that to all guys. All guys would be kind of familiar with that. But the point is, I don't know everything. I learn new stuff all the time, and I'm open to that. But I will argue the point that is safe and the industry backs. The industry does not back, even though there's manufacturers out there manufacturing this low solder, low temp solder and stuff, they do not, it is not a brazing solder. It's not for permanent brazing. Okay? So it is not to be used on these joints that are both sealed system. The reason it's called a sealed system is because everything is soldered together and there's never going to be a leak unless there's corrosion in the tubing. There's never going to be a leak in that joint. That's why the term is called sealed system. Every other system is not a truly sealed system like ours are. That's why ours are called a sealed system. Okay? To give you the whole story on that. That's why refrigerators and freezers in the home are called sealed systems. Okay? But they're also a capillary system. We don't call it that. We just call it sealed system. So when you hear sealed system, you know somebody's talking about a home domestic refrigerator or freezer. It's that simple. Commercial can be either commercial or refrigeration. Usually sometimes they're said both at the same time, commercial refrigeration unit. And that's like a restaurant, those kind of units. Refrigerators, coolers, whatever. Condiment counters, all that stuff. It's all refrigeration, commercial refrigeration. And then HVAC. The other one would be like ice machines. They're not really considered a refrigeration unit. They are somewhat a refrigeration. They're kind of a freezing unit because they're freezing the plate, evaporator plate. But they're actually called commercial ice makers, ice machines. And so that's the difference. They're different kinds of units. And the biggest reason is size of tubing and capillary or expansion valve or other type of metering device that's not a capillary on the commercial and others. Refrigerators, freezers in the homes, capillary. Okay? So somebody will argue with me, well, there's some of these new LGs and okay, I've worked on Samsung and LG. I never will again. I don't endorse them as a real refrigerator or freezer. Okay, I don't, because they're electronics companies. They're in so many lawsuits right now for class actions. They don't know what they're doing. They need to go back to making stereos and get the hell out of our appliance industry. Washers are blowing up, Samsung's washers. Cell phones, batteries are blowing up. Samsung batteries are blowing up. I had one blow up. Yeah, extremely dangerous. Extremely dangerous. That's what's left of it. See how melted it is? That was the phone. That blew up. I had it in my hand. It was this phone right here. I rebuilt the phone, took it apart and rebuilt it because I had to get all my data off it. So I was able to get all the data off, take it apart and myself and rebuild it. But there's all the pieces that were all melted. I was driving. Yeah, driving at the time. I had to stop immediately, pull off the side of the road. This thing is shooting out both sides of the phone. Both sides of the phone. Shooting sparks out of it. Just shooting out both sides. And I'm holding it at the bottom. And it's shooting out here, shooting out. Just like a torch on both sides. And I grabbed the door and I threw it on the concrete, on the street. It sat there for about 45 seconds. Just like the cars that the Teslas catch on fire. They can't put them out. They have to burn out. The street was totally torched. And then when it stopped burning and torching like it was, I got it and then I was in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert in New Mexico, up in the mountains. So I was screwed. I had no phone. So I have two phones now because I'm never going anywhere without a second phone. But it almost burned the hell out of me. That's these lithium batteries. It just blew up. It must have got hot or something. So it actually just blew up and then started torching. So it's, if you have any questions, don't be intimidated by talking to me. I'm the nicest guy in the world. I just don't. I'm just so fed up with what's going on, and I'm trying to get the right information out there to people that have missed this, and I don't know how you guys have missed it. Well, I do. There's just too much wrong information on YouTube. There's a lot of dangerous information on YouTube. It's unbelievable. The right torch is acetylene, AIR-ACETYLENE, AIR-ACETYLENE. The air gets sucked in through the turbo torch tip. Okay? It's not another tank. Okay? That's oxy-acetylene, and you don't need oxygen with refrigerators and freezers in a home. The tubing is too small for oxygen. Oxygen accelerates the temperature up, thus the oxygen. Just like a fire, you put oxygen in, it burns hotter. Okay? That's the purpose of oxygen. Oxygen propane, same thing. It is accelerating the temperature up. That one goes up to 5,100 degrees. Oxygen propane, are you kidding? It's still 3,000 degrees or more higher than it's supposed to, 3,400 degrees higher than it needs to be. 14 to 1,700 degrees. That's AIR-ACETYLENE, okay? And it's $40 for the cylinder of acetylene. $40. $200 one-time investment for the kit. The turbotorch kit with the regulator and the hose. $40 each time you get, and it lasts about a year. The tank of acetylene, the MC tank, the small one. And you can't go wrong. You don't have this cost of, and you don't have to do the flowing of nitrogen. Because carbon, it's not hot enough to build up carbon in the system. You're only on it for like 20, 30 seconds. You see what I'm saying? Then you evacuate the system. Here's another thing. This is something that everybody is getting screwed up with the HVAC schools and the HVAC instruction. Because there's not a metering device, expansion valve or otherwise, in our system, sealed system, this is the metering device. The diameter of that hole is such that when it goes into the bigger, this is only a quarter, but when it goes into the evaporator at 5/16 size, it actually, the high pressure now goes into that bigger tube and it becomes extremely lower in pressure because there's a lot more room in there, okay, than that tiny squeezed tube that's coming out of. So it's not under pressure like it was when it gets into the evaporator. because it's 5/16 tubing. As soon as that happens, the relationship physics, simple physics, pressure and temperature are directly related. If you watch the news and the weather, when we have high pressure, it's hotter. We have a low pressure system, it's raining and it's colder. Okay, same thing here. Higher pressure, hotter. Higher temperature. When this goes into a low pressure situation where this goes from 125 pounds to about 8 pounds of pressure, because it's so big inside there, it dramatically drops in temperature. And it's designed that this is 5/16 and this tiny little hole. The difference between those that drops that pressure to that certain point is calculated to drop it to 0 degrees. Okay? That's the metering system. Okay? It's engineered that way. That tube is that size for a reason. It's that tiny for that reason. It has to go to this bigger one, this certain size, to get to 0 degrees because it drops in pressure and then drops equally in temperature. So it gets to 0 degrees, and that's why it starts to frost the evaporator. Okay? That's how it works. So same thing with the other units, whatever they are, with expansion valves or whatever. That's their metering device, just like the capillary is, but it's different. Okay, those can get plugged up and all kinds of stuff. You got to really be critical, just like on a car. Car has an orifice in it, and when you open the system of a car, it's critical, and they demand that you put a new orifice in it, and sometimes the collector and everything else. I'm not going to get into cars, but it's the same thing. So this is unique in that we have a different sealed system, has a different type of it's a capillary system. So with this, it's not as critical that we have to worry about the expansion valve or metering device getting plugged up like a car. So when you evacuate the system, I used to have a 4 CFM Robinair, and it was so heavy. Oh my God, every time, 30 years or so, I carried it around. I don't carry it anymore. I'm not carrying that. It's like steel, man. It's like 2 hands. I just bought a $35 one on eBay, 2 CFM. That's all I need. The reason is because you don't need to pull it into 200, 400 microns. You don't need to do it. You don't need to pull it down to 400 microns. We don't have to worry about that. There's another time saver. We don't have to worry about pulling it down to 200 or 400 microns with a capillary system. Okay? We don't have a metering device or an orifice like in a car to worry about. All we need to do is pull it down 20, 30 minutes, even 15. Depends on what it smells like when you open up and it looks like the oil or whatever. Okay? If it's really grungy and there's black oil and it really stinks, you may have burnout, and if that's the case, you're going to have to flush the system. But if it's not like that, and it's just normal, but you smell oil and whatever, that's fine. But if it's not real, then you just do normal. And you can blow it out with nitrogen. We had a way of doing it back when I learned 40-some years ago. It was a factory way. It was Whirlpool's advertised way of doing it. And it was called a chase. You chase the system. The chase charge. It's like chasing a beer or a shot with a beer or water or whatever. Okay, it follows up. And in this case, what you would do is you would put like an ounce of Freon in the system before you would evacuate it. After it's soldered up, put an ounce of Freon in there, and then you would evacuate the Freon. You'd let it run around with the compressor running, with the new compressor, for about a minute or so, and then you would evacuate it out the high side. And we used to have a passive bag also that you could use. I actually helped the engineers to design Whirlpool. My pictures were on the back of the box, the first production. But they don't have the passive bags anymore. But those were nice because you could just throw them in your back of your truck. Or put it into a reclamation unit now, okay? But you discharge it out of the high side. So basically the Freon molecules would push anything that might be left in there out of there. That was the whole idea and purpose. But we also had our R11. I still use the Chase, about an ounce or so of Freon, R134A, and then evacuate it out of the high side after about a minute or so. That's why I don't use nitrogen or anything else. Most people who have nitrogen just use nitrogen. But you don't have to make a big deal out of it. Just blow it out. You're going to evacuate it anyways, okay? So whatever's left in there, plus you have a new dryer on it. Always replace the dryer. Do not take a shortcut. It's going to screw you up if you don't put a dryer on it sometimes. Put a dryer on it. If you have anything left in the system, it's going to be absorbed in the dryer. Any smallest particles of contaminant or anything, moisture, even after you evacuate it. But you leave it on for 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Close the gauges up. Isolate the system on the gauges so the gauges are closed. Turn the vacuum pump off. I like to do this as a last check. I don't put nitrogen to it at that point. I trust my brazing because I do it properly with the right torch. I'm now taking stuff out to the truck. Leave the gauges on, make sure everything's, all the hoses, recheck them. Because when you're moving the gauges, the hoses can get loose sometimes. And you start leaking. Check all the hoses, recheck them, close the gauges up, make sure everything's tight, turn the vacuum pump off, let it sit in the vacuum on the gauges. Look at the needle, it's probably pegged, like it always does. It can only get down to 24.5, I think it is, on Earth. The lowest vacuum is 24.5. It always pulls down to 28 to 30, it looks like, but it's not really that. It's not possible on Earth. If you look it up, you'll find what I'm talking about. The lowest vacuum you can get on Earth is like 24.5, I believe it is. I don't remember exactly, but it's about 24 something. Anyways, so, but it looks like it's pegged. Just notice where the needle is. Tap on the gauge and see if the needle moves. Notice where it is, then leave and start packing up your truck. Come back and see if that needle moved it. If that needle moved 2 or 4 or 6 inches, it came up 2 or 4 or 6 inches, didn't come up to 0, okay? Didn't lose all the vacuum, that's not what I'm talking about. It just came up 1 or 2 markings, 2, 4, or 6 inches. Then you need to sit there and wait and watch it and give it another 15 or 20 minutes as you're packing up everything else. Come back. If it doesn't move from there, where it moved up to, 2, 4, or 6 inches, if it doesn't move anymore in another 30 minutes, there's no leak, okay? But if it does, it'll continue to rise. You're pretty much guaranteed there's a leak. If you get up to 6, 8, 10 inches, you just might as well, assume there's a leak. Let it finish and see if it goes all the way up to 0, but it's probably going to. You got a leak. Now you got to find the leak. Put nitrogen to it and see if you can hear where it's blowing out. At that point, but if you do come up 2, 4, 6 inches and it stops, you still need to leave the vacuum pump. That's why you want to leave it hooked up. You just turn it off. Go ahead and turn the vacuum pump on and then open the gauges again and leave it on for another 15, 20, 30 minutes because you still got something in that system. It absorbed 2 or 4 or 6 inches of that vacuum, and that's what a contaminant will do. It'll eat up some of the vacuum. It'll absorb it. So it'll only come up a couple inches and then stop because it absorbed that vacuum and then it won't affect it anymore. It won't go all the way to 0. Okay? But it shows you that there's still something in the system. So then just keep vacuuming it for maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes. And then do the same thing. Turn it off, close the gauges, turn it off. In that order, close the gauges, then turn it off the vacuum pump, and leave it another 20, 30 minutes. And you should see right away if it comes up 2 or 4 inches, probably in 5, 10 minutes. And if it doesn't move, I would like to go a little longer as I'm talking to the customer, I'm filling out the invoice, whatever, and finishing up, getting my Freon ready and everything else, so that I give it long enough and make sure it doesn't come up at all from being pegged. If it doesn't move at all, you're good. Okay? Charger system, you can do it. You can do it by weight if you want. If it's R12 to R134A, you can't do it by weight. You got to do it by pressure. Okay? You want to try to convert 85% or whatever garbage these guys are doing out there? Go ahead. I'm not going to rely on that. Okay? I'm going to look at my gauges and the evaporator. The gauges are going to read if the ambient temperature in the house is 70 degrees or something like that, like a normal house would be, unless it's really hot, 90 degrees. But if it's just a normal temperature in the house, then the ambient temperature, the high side's probably going to be somewhere between 90 and 120 degrees on the high side. Anywhere between there is fine. The low side, it depends on what system it is. Between 90 and 120 is going to be okay. Low side is going to run about 8 to 12 pounds on the low side. Don't go up higher than 12 pounds. You go over 15, 20, 25, you're going to blow the compressor valve. Okay? Don't do that. I've seen guys do that, pump it up to 20, 25 pounds. On the low side, it's like, what are you doing? That's a commercial system, pressures on some of the commercial systems. So they must work on some other systems or HVAC or something. Okay? And then they go and work on this and think the low side goes up that high too. It doesn't, and you're going to blow the compressor. So, 8 to 12 pounds on the low side. When you start getting about 8 pounds, look at the evaporator. It's going to start frosting up. Put the cover back over the evaporator. If you replace the evaporator, shut the door, keep the doors closed so that you keep cool. If you have warm air hitting the evaporator, that's going to increase the pressure because it increased the temperature against the evaporator. Warmer air in the room. So let the evaporator, put the cover back over, don't screw it in, and put the door closed, both of them, if you have 2 doors. Most of these are, Sub-Zeros are separate units, so you're only going to have 1 door. But whatever refrigerator, whatever it is. And then look at the evaporator. Most of these refrigerators, if it's other brands, you're going to see the slits down at the bottom of the evaporator cover. And if you didn't move the cover out, take the cover off, then you can see the evaporator tubing at the bottom. Purpose for that slits is to be able for diagnosis and repair. So we can see the tubing at the bottom. That's the last runs of the evaporator. So if those are frosted, Freon is all in the whole evaporator. Okay? That's the purpose for those slits. No other reason. It's not for airflow or anything else. That goes around the bottom. So same thing if it's in Sub-Zeros, you have the panel, the whole evaporator will be frosted, start frosting up all the way down. But on Sub-Zeros, you don't want it to get all the way to the bottom, the last two runs, back and forth runs. You don't want to put Freon in it until those are all the way frosted. Okay? If you do that, you're going to be over like 15 pounds. The Freon has to compress. And when you put the Freon in, it has to compress. The compressor has to compress it. And it's going to change and start to fill up that last evaporator runs as it's compressing it. So you're going to overcharge it, okay, is what I'm getting at. So trust the gauges, but also look at the evaporator, that it's getting close to being frosted all the way, but your pressure is about 8, 10, and then 12, and slow down as you're putting it in. Always put it in as gas. Can up. Put it in a hot water bowl of hot water if you need to. If it freezes up, put it in a bowl of hot water. Don't do it too hot, and be careful about doing it with setting it in the sink with the hot water on. I did that once, and the lady's hot water heater was too high, and it exploded. because her water was over 170 degrees. Her water heater was, something was wrong with her water heater. She had it too high, or the thermostat was bad. So the can exploded in the sink. Luckily, it was in the sink. It scared us is all it did. It didn't do any damage or anything. But, so be careful that you're not too hot. It doesn't have to be that hot of water. Warm is fine, because it's gonna make the freezing go away. That's all you're doing is raising the pressure of the can inside by warming up the can. So it doesn't have to be hot, hot, hot. But it'll go in quicker. If you do that, be careful, because you're going to push the Freon in really fast then. If you're doing it slow and then you warm up the can really, get it hot, and you're going to overcharge it. When you get, especially if you get towards the end. So shake it. If you're towards the end, don't try to warm it up. Keep the pressure going in about the same. Just shake it, and it'll get up to about 12. Take your lines off, and you're done. Okay? That's Sub-Zero. The other ones, Whirlpool, different brands, they'll be about 3 pounds of pressure, 5 pounds of pressure, close to zero, but not zero. If you work on those brands, you know what the pressures are. They're different. Some of them are close to zero. Whirlpool's brands typically were anywhere between 3 and 5 pounds of pressure on the low side. And same thing, about 100 to 125, 135 on the high side. Those pressures that I started talking about were Sub-Zero pressures. 90 to 125 high side. 8 to 12 on the low side. That's Sub-Zero. They're a little bit different. They're a little bit higher on the low side, about the same on the high side. Okay? And then you can visually look at the evaporator too. So that's another way of charging it. If you're doing a conversion from 12 to 134A. If it's 134A, just charge it the same as it weigh in the Freon, like you usually do. And then you can just, leave. Because there's no leaks. You've been thorough. So the biggest point of this video is to let you know there is a better way and a proper way and the right way and a cheaper way and a quicker way, and it's the turbo torch. This is a turbo torch, okay? You got one handle to turn on the gas. The air sucks in here, AIR-ACETYLENE. One tank of acetylene, MC tank, short tank, $40 to get it filled up. And your tip, this is an A8 tip. Okay, it says acetylene on the bottom there. A8. Okay? That's not a B, it's an 8. A8. Okay? So that's the tip. And it's a beautiful tip. There actually is an orifice in there. It's kind of impossible to see with this lighting, but it can be cleaned. If you look in there, it's right there. You can see that thing in the center there. Right there. You see the thing sticking out in the center of the hole. That's the orifice opening. You see the little hole? The light? You're looking at the orifice. I don't know if you can see that. But, anyways, you can see it in there. That's the nozzle with the orifice. You can't see the hole of the orifice anyways. But you can get in there with it. They have a tool that you can go in there and you can clean the orifice out. That's the right size for that hole, that orifice hole, and go through gently. You want to be gentle because you don't want to make the hole bigger or anything else. You want to be gentle, just clean it out back and forth to get anything, debris that might be stuck in it off it. If the flame starts to get screwed up on the end, it's usually because there's something in the orifice. It's blocking some of the acetylene. But this tip swirls. It swirls when it comes out, and it wraps around the tube. It's amazing how it works. But it's the best tip to use, and it's the proper temperature, proper tool for the job. For refrigerators and freezers, anything that is smaller tubing in a home domestic situation, appliance, okay? So that's the right, do not use oxygen of any sort, propane, oxygen acetylene. Don't use oxygen unless you're doing systems that are half-inch or bigger. If they have a capillary, you don't use oxy-acetylene at all, because the biggest tubes are 1/4 and 5/16. That's it. Okay, so that's it. I've run this way too long. I mellowed out, and that's how I usually am. But I'm sorry, I just get so agitated with these idiots out here that are really ruining things for our customers and for other techs. And I'm fed up with flying to different cities to clean up after these guys. So we need to police them out of our industry. And guys that don't know how the proper way, they think that, oxygen and carrying that big setup in the house is the right way to do things, you learned wrong. This is exactly why, and I explained it all to you, and why. You're not going to build carbon in the system anymore. You don't have to flow nitrogen. That's for HVAC and other commercial systems where you use oxy-acetylene. We don't ever have to flow nitrogen on refrigerators and freezers. We don't have to flow nitrogen. You don't do it because you use the right torch, and it doesn't build up carbon. You're only on that joint 20 to 30 seconds. Boom. And you're not on it that hot, 14 to 1700 degrees. The same temperature it takes to flow solder. It's the exact same temperature. You see how perfect that is? You're not 3 to 6,000 degrees. Way above. That's a cutting torch, okay? That's going to cause carbon buildup. Bad. If you get that in the system, you're screwed. So you have to flow nitrogen. That's why I've never had to use it. I've never flowed nitrogen, because I don't use the wrong torch. Okay? I hope that helps. And I hope that you guys had thick enough skin, and most people do. Occasionally, you find I need my safe room type of person out there. And those are usually the ones that aren't doing things right. And they take everything personal and, I know what I'm doing. I know better than you type of attitude. Well, I was doing brazing when your mom was on her first date with the 400th guy before your father. Okay? I know it was rude. Maybe it was the 500th guy before your father. So you have something to learn. I've been doing brazing a lot longer than you've even been alive. And learning from YouTube, I know that this is on YouTube, but you can't trust everything you see on YouTube. I've given you explicitly why you do the things this way, and you're going to save yourself money, time, and do it properly. Silphos, S-I-L-F-O-S, Silphos, silver solder, 15%, and white paste flux. Everybody knows what it is, white paste flux. Comes in a little white bottle with the applicator, the brush, white flux, and use it. Even though the solder says don't use flux. Okay? The reason is because you're going to make sure if a joint's clean, it's going to bring that all the way around, wrap around with the right tip, the swirl tip. It's going to solder it in an instant. You don't have to be going all the way around the tube. You don't want to do that. If you have it clean and you've got flux on there, it'll flow around. All you have to do is wipe the flux off. The only reason they don't want you to use flux is because it's corrosive. And if you leave it on there, it can eat into the copper. Guess what? Most of the time I've ever done jobs, I've never wiped the flux off. Never. I've been back there 3, 5 years later. It didn't eat the tubing. Didn't eat into the tubing. So, you know, from experience, that's just BS. Yes, the potential is there. It's corrosive to the material, to the copper. So just wipe it off. It's not a big deal. That's the only issue with it, why they say not to use it. It's not any other reason. So, there you go. I hope that's helpful. I hope that makes it a lot easier to do the jobs. And I would love to hear back from people and say what their experience was. And I've heard back from some already. They were like, you know, it's great. And one guy was like, I've been doing that for 30 years, just like you're talking about. He's an older guy. This is the way we were taught, the proper way. And it's the only way for appliance refrigerators, sealed systems, home refrigerators and freezers, okay? Sealed systems with a capillary, okay? In the smaller tubing. All right, once again, it's Michael Riley. I got to get, because I've been on here way too long, but I hope that helps. I brought up a lot of different things as I ran into them and started talking about them and explained those too. So I wanted to do that because it's really important to know as much as you can. That's why I train. A lot of people do not like to help other people that don't know. I've always been that way. I've always shared. When I was at Whirlpool Corporation, I was helping new techs all the time. And I've been training and I have a school, Appliance Repair Tech School.com. And I've trained one-on-one. I take them out on the road and train. So they can see exactly how it's not in a classroom. That's not proper training. I mean, they have those universities and all this whatever. I've got names for them, but I'm not going to call them names. All that garbage school type of stuff. The guy's just trying to make a bunch of money on 30 students. And it's not helpful. Because you go out there, you got more questions now after class than you do, because you're not doing it on the actual appliance. And it's made up. It's a made up problem in the classroom. That's BS. We run into stuff out here, melted wires, all kinds of stuff you're not going to see in a classroom. Okay? So the real diagnosis is out in the field on real service calls. That's the way you want to learn. And that's the way my school is. Anyways, I'd like to help and teach you the right way to do things. It makes it a lot easier for other techs when they follow up, and it stops putting a bad name on our industry. And it's safer for the customer. They're getting what they're paid for, too. They're not getting ripped off. Okay? Stop using a low-temp garbage, please. Using a low-temp solder because I know why you're using it. It's not because you want to use the low-temp solder. It's because you don't want to buy the right equipment. You want to use a propane torch to do a brazing job, and that's not going to hold. Low-temp solder will not. It's not the same as a high-temp braze. It's not even close, and it will not hold, and it's not as strong as a high-temp braze. It's not. Look it up. It's all over the internet. And that's why you don't want to use it. They can develop leaks from just a system getting, just a high side leg, getting really hot, overly hot. And then it gets close to the melting point and it actually cracks the joint. And now you got a leak. I mean, it's just wrong. Do the job right. Okay? So, most of the high temp brazes are anywhere 20 to 30,000 psi strength. They're strong joints. They're not coming apart. That's why it's called a sealed system. Sealed forever. Unless there's corrosion in the tubing. And that's what happens. Tubing corrodes because it's copper. And it gets corrosion. And it gets pinholes in it. But not on the joint. You're not going to break that joint once it's brazed. Okay? All right. Take care, and if you have any questions, feel free to comment. Just like I said, if you're going to be rude, I'm just going to block you anyway, so I wouldn't even waste your time. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to block it and block you. So you'll miss out on some really important information. Maybe you can set aside those feelings and that know-it-all attitude. Maybe you can learn something. You'll actually make more money too, because customers will call you back and they'll tell other people you did a great job. The key thing of not doing was screwing people over, and guys just don't get this. They have email systems now, especially in developments. If you do it to one person, you're not going back to that development, because they're going to send it around to all the people in the development that so-and-so at this company screwed them over. You're never going back in that development. So when this goes around to different developments, you're gonna have to change your name. And then they're gonna find out that you're gonna have to change your name again. You got guys that do that. They're called fly-by-nights. Okay? And then finally the district attorney gets involved, and a bunch of Russians got run out of Arizona for that. Yeah. Yeah, maybe you should just try to think about doing things right. So, I know it doesn't bother your sleep at night, but stop ripping customers off. Karma, it does come around. What goes around comes around. It's going to come back to you. But you're going to lose your business. Simple as that. People have many different ways, social media and everything else. On email lists. They do it by email lists in their developments. I worked in Rancho Santa Fe in San Diego, $30 to $50 million homes. I was always in there because I treated customers right. Never ripped them off. Didn't see dollar signs when I went to their home. I just didn't have that attitude, because they don't want you in there if you have that attitude. Oh, I'm going to charge him a bunch of money because he's got money. You treat a customer like that, they know what you're doing, and they won't let on to you, but you're never coming back, and they're going to tell everybody in that development. You're never going to do another job in Rancho Santa Fe or wherever you ripped them off at. Okay? So learn ahead of time. People aren't as stupid as you are. Okay? That's the bottom line. All right. So now that I'm done with my insults, I hope I've been helpful. And the insults are only to the stupid people. Everybody else understands that. Smart people understand that. Yeah. Stupid people probably don't get it. So I'm glad I could help. This came up today when I was answering a guy that they responded to my 20 to 30 second AIR-ACETYLENE example. It's a reel, I guess, or short. It's a short, 20 to 30 second short, and it's showing 20 seconds. You can do the brazing. Go look at it. It's a ABA Appliance YouTube channel. Okay. All right. Once again, it's Michael Riley. I got to get. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. And I appreciate it. And good luck to everybody. And if you have other questions about anything else, you can ask me too. That's what I do. I train. Okay. All right. Take care. Thank you. Bye.